All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We are here once again. I think this is the fourth or fifth installment of a ongoing series that Adam and I, aka Karp, will be having on the channel probably for like the next decade, as long as we are analyzing Palantir, which is going deeper into Palantir's government business, because Adam is someone who understands that government business very strong, better than a lot of other people. And he's found some new things over the past couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about all those different ideas and things that he found, including potentially a billion-dollar contract with the Navy. Adam, thank you for being on. It's been a hell of a week for Palantir, hell of a couple months since we last talked. I guess we'll start it off with raw reaction to earnings and the stock closing in on $60.
Stock is parabolic at the moment. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. I'm just going to keep it simple. Earnings were pretty damn fucking good, to say the least. None of it really was a surprise to me. I knew they would beat. That's what they always do. They're always pretty cautious with their guide. The government reacceleration, I think that's like the big surprise for most people, and I emphasize most people.
Because you knew these deals were coming, and
yeah, and Karp's letter, the first sentence is, "This is just the beginning." So, I mean, is the government going to keep a 40% growth rate for the next decade? I don't know about that, but it's going to keep growing, and they may hit some lumpiness with, the transition into a new presidency. So it might be a little slower to start 2025. Just because it is a transition of power and there's a lot of new people in new positions making new decisions. I just want to make this very clear as it relates to Palantir. It does not matter if the White House is controlled by a Republican. It does not matter if it is controlled by a Democrat. The Senate does not matter if it is controlled by a Republican or if by a Democrat, and the same goes to the House. It does not matter if it's majority controlled, Republican, Democrat, bipartisan. It does not matter. Palantir is going to grow their defense and government business regardless of who is in these power seats in Congress. So for now, it's the Republicans. And, I think for a lot of Palantir people, they should just take a quick reflection back on memory lane. When they went public, it was with Trump in the White House. Now, granted, it was literally only a couple months, so it's really not fair to judge them on that.
Yeah.
But, they did have a few months of, the people that were with Trump. So, I mean, is it anything that we can really, look at and compare it to? I don't think we can, because it was literally, 2-3 months. And they were just going public then. And the company is such a different company today than it was at that time. So I don't even think it's really fair to compare. So yeah, I mean, the numbers are just absolutely disgusting. The 77 commercial growth is just, it is grab the Kleenex and buy calls on them.
I'm stealing that. That's a good one. I got to steal that. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's really just incredible. I mean, the United States government and the commercial, it is just off the chains good. And when Karp says, we eviscerated this quarter, he is not joking. And I mean, I know a lot of people like that line, and it's a great line. They just, obviously leadership knows a little bit more than, say, the random employee that's working on an AIP boot camp. And they know more than the random shareholder that's, maybe listening to us. The hardcore people who have been researching Palantir for many years, and specifically in this area, the government.
Yeah.
And there's not many. We knew it was coming, and we know it's going to keep coming. The big thing that people need to understand with the new Trump presidency, and then a potential, whomever Democrat presidency in 28, you have no idea, but there's a potential of maybe you get Vance for 8 years if people like him and then he runs. So right now with Palantir and the government, there's a lot of Palantir connections to this current administration. And I think that's really the thing that people are highlighting. And yes, it's very, very important that it does get said, but there's also very hardcore connections on the other side. And that's why I think Palantir will be, quote, neutral. Obviously, some people within the company, Lonsdale in particular, he's been more vocal in the past, especially for his support of Trump. And he's openly accepted on Twitter, to work with, a Doge if it really does happen, a government efficiency department, whatever. Vance obviously is very connected to Thiel. So, the Palantir connection is really strong as it relates to being top of the White House. But everybody needs to remember, it was Biden and Obama that brought them into the Department of Defense. So let's just, take politics aside and just look at it from a straight, shareholder perspective. We're going to be perfectly fine in 10, 20 years, no matter who is in power. And that's really the big thing that I wanted to stress. And there's going to be things that happen that Palantir doesn't get that I'll be upset about, you'll be upset about. And it doesn't matter that, Trump and Lonsdale are on the phone. It's going to happen. And just like there's things that they're going to win, like the Navy deal, and that didn't happen because of Trump, obviously. He has nothing to do with this. This is the stuff. So it's really going off. It's a great time, obviously, to have been, watching this company, investing in this company since basically DPO and seeing the parabolic growth. The stock price is just, off the chain. The short volume is off the chain. So it's really hard to say where it will wind up going. I personally believe now.
That's what I was going to ask real quick before we get into all the government stuff we're going to talk about. Stock itself. So obviously you thought earnings were great. Pretty much the market did. I thought it was great. But it wasn't like 50, 60% growth or anything like that. It was solid 30% growth. Stock's at 130 billion. Any thoughts on valuation and if it should be here?
I saw Coach Drop tweet at you, and I kind of just said to myself, yeah, he remembers, he knows. So, the defense side of the business, he's not wrong, especially now that I don't want to say the cat's out of the bag, but certainly it's not as secretive as before. The defense side of the business alone should be treated with that multiple of 100 billion market cap. So if they're getting 100 billion market cap just on the defense side, and forget how I come to that and how he comes to that, because I just know there's so much crap coming down the pipeline that's really the multiple that you're paying for. But forget that aside, then that only leaves you 30 billion in market cap for the commercial. Is that fair? Maybe. So maybe Wall Street woke up, they did a little bit of research, they're looking at the company and they're saying, you know what? It's definitely an expensive buy for today. However, they have no debt. They have $4.5 billion in cash. They have a product that is impeccable, that's as sticky as can be, and it's in the beginning stages of its alpha growth. So they're going to give it a high multiple. So when you see all the analysts and you see all the people on Twitter talk about, oh, it has 150 PE, blah, blah, blah. First off, fuck you. And secondly, I was investing in it when it didn't even have a PE. So double fuck you. So it does not matter. What you're paying for is quality. And, you definitely have heard it. My dad used to say it all the time. You get what you pay for. And Palantir is a alpha unicorn monster. I'm getting on my Karp right now. That is just going to go to the moon.
Banging the table. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, the stock move is tremendous. And I don't think any of the employees, including Karp, even thought that they would go from, let's call it August 5th, 29, 20, 29. Now we're at 60. I don't think any of them saw that. And trust me, they're very happy. So, but what is going to be the true fair multiple? Because it's an alpha growth story. The product is impeccable. They invest in the company to improve the product and develop new products. And more importantly, they're super, super lean. They're not 10,000 employees and fat. They're 3,500 employees and, six-pack strong and flexing right now. And they're ready to go up another level. So maybe the market's really looking at it and saying, you know what, this company really is worth $150 billion, 75 for the defense, 75 for commercial, just to make things easy. Mm-hmm. And maybe next year they don't have a massive, jump in stock price. I mean, when you already did 250%, if we go into next year at 65, maybe we finish the year at 85. Who knows? That's not nearly as big as what we did this year. Still obviously very good, but really, really early. The customer growth is ridiculous. And the market, because let's face it, the retail people, especially the longs like you and I, who have been investing in this for over 40 years, 4 years, at least I could speak for myself. We don't have, I would like to say, the cash flow and the capital just sitting at our, bedside table, like these Wall Street people that are like, I got 500 million. All right, I'm going to put 10 million into, and
right. I don't care about the price. Just get me into the stock and whatever. Right.
Right. And, I wouldn't. And for me personally, if someone said to me, here you go, here's $100,000, invest it in whatever, and give me 10% cut when you sell it, I would tell them straight up, all right, you're going to have to wait a long time because it's going into Palantir. And I would just, if that's how it was, I would just throw it in and not worry about it if and when we have a pullback and a dip, and I'll wait another 4 years and I'll gladly still be here and I'll gladly just wait and wait and wait. And patience is a virtue.
All right, so let's get into what we've got going on today. So this was a big piece of news, and this is why I think, you're just such a gem to the community and people love you. You've been able to, along with a lot of other people that work with you, but you're really obsessed with finding these government deals before they get announced because it helps you figure out if you should be buying the stock ultimately. Like, it gives you alpha, gives you signal, and it gave you a lot of signal a couple of years ago. On my market open, I think on Tuesday, you broke this news literally at like 9 a.m., and this is the news, folks. So we're going to break it down, get into it, and try to understand what is going on here. So 5-year, $1 billion contract with the Navy. It is a notice of intent to award a sole source contract to Palantir Technologies. The current SAM.gov website, for some reason today, is not working, but we do have a screenshot of it from the website itself. And reading of it from a little bit, the Department of Navy intends to award a contract on a sole source basis to Palantir. This requirement is for the procurement of Palantir Technologies' commercial off-the-shelf products and services, including software licenses, perpetual and subscription, software maintenance and support, renewals, professional services, yada, yada, yada. Palantir software provides granular classification-based access controls necessary for defense solutions that require deploying IT resources across different classification levels. 5-year base period, 5-year option. We'll talk about what that means. Total estimated value is $920 million. And if the website was working, it would say that the intent of the contract to be announced publicly is January 2025. So what the hell is this? Why is the Navy contracting us? And what are the details on the specifics in terms of the timeline and the dollar amount?
Great question. There you go. It's finally here. It's Project Overmatch. It's the Navy's portion to JADC2, and it's the first step. So, I've said it before, and it was nice to actually see ex-Palantir employee, unfortunately ex-Cam, say it publicly. Yep. The Navy has been the hardest one for them to break into, and for whatever reason, and I don't know that reason why, but they finally, got their, I'll call it a foot in the door. I know $1 billion contract is obviously a big contract, but that's a foot in the door type of contract for the Navy. So just to go back and, play things real quickly. And if you've been following me forever, this is real basic, but, JADC2 is basically the Army's whole thing, the military's whole thing of bringing everything together into a joint picture. And each branch has their own, way to, put their, integration in. Can't get the words out. So excited. Project Overmatch is the Navy's component to JADC2. So Palantir is finally getting their official, portion for their efforts to work with JADC2 for the Navy under Project Overmatch. And that's most likely what this contract is going to be for based on the description and what we can see. Like Amit said, unfortunately, SAM Gov website's not working today.
It's almost like they saw you leak it and they're like, yeah, we got to take this. This is the website right here. Maybe it's a technical thing too or something.
Yeah.
Maybe the government didn't pay their AWS bills because they're not efficient. So maybe that's what that meant.
Well, then Bezos can, I'll speak to him after this. Because the thing that's on this web, because usually on all these, contract opportunities and RFIs and RFPs, there's a lot of, attachments, if you will. And usually it's a Word doc or a PowerPoint. Sometimes you've seen me post it, like with the CPI2, I posted the spreadsheet and you saw Palantir's name. So there's just a lot of crap that they put out with all of these. Some of it is simple, like fill out your name and number and a contact. Some of it, whatever. But for this one, the link actually brings you directly to a United States government defense website that you are not allowed in. And if you request access, they are watching you. So I did not request access. And
this is the type of shit you go through to find this stuff for us, bro. Oh
yeah.
My God, I love it.
And, you have to go in through NAVWAR. And I did speak about NAVWAR once. I don't know if I was ever on the show and spoke about it, but NAVWAR is the Navy's Information Warfare Center. So it makes perfect sense that that's where Palantir was going to land with NAVWAR. And if you scroll up, you could actually see it is with, the information warfare, which is exactly what they do. Yeah, naval and and ironically, the Pacific. So, Indo-Pacific. So it's all about Taiwan and the South China Sea. But
real quick, before we go deeper, clarify the 10-year, 5-year option. What does this thing mean? 5-year base versus 5-year option?
Yep. So like I've said, the government and DOD, they don't want to be, quote, stuck to a vendor. So they've been very big the past couple of years on awarding 5-year deals. And you saw that a lot, especially with Palantir. Maven was a 5-year or 4-year with the 1 year, whatever it was, but it was 5 years. They're very big on 5 years because they don't want to be stuck. So what they did with this, and it made a lot more sense, and I'm sure it made a lot more economic sense also, is they said, we're going to award you a contract in January of 2025. Probably. That's what it says. It says, expect a contract in January of 2025.
Right.
And you'll get paid that in the 5 years. I don't know. I don't know if it was a 5-year and in the first 5 years, they'll get 500 million. And then in the back 5 years, it would be an option, which they would exercise and they get I don't know the structure and I'll never know the structure, but they will get awarded a contract supposedly in January. And it will be for a 5-year Navy deal with a 5-year option.
So theoretically, it could be 10 years of $1 billion, which is just basically $100 million top line revenue just from one deal.
Correct. And this goes back to the thing I said last time I was on here, and this I remember, is the word billion and the B, it just gets people going. And you just saw it because, when I posted it and then everyone saw it, it just takes off. And then, of course, you have a couple, well, it was really 920 million. It's like, dude.
This is why you missed the stock. This is why you never invested.
Exactly. And, the other thing I think everybody needs to just reflect on about this specific deal is this is their biggest contract to date. So it's bigger than Titan. It's bigger than Maven. The last biggest one they got was actually right before it went public, which was the precursor to Titan, which is how I knew they were going to win Titan. And that was like $820 million. It was the CD1 that I forgot exactly what the real name was. So this is going to be their first. And I know it's not technically $1 billion, but close enough. It's their largest contract ever. And they'll build off of it. And we did see when I posted a few months ago, the Titan proposal, that's going to be $1.5 billion. So, I mean, you're starting to see the bees come in. And that's really it. I think there's a big psychological thing when you see, because when you go and when I every day Monday through Friday after 5 p.m. and I go on the DoD contract website and you see the usuals, Lockheed, Raytheon, Northrop, Boeing, you see all of them. And, every now and then you'll see Lockheed wins, $3 billion contract. But, they're getting like $800 million contracts, $1 billion contracts, like every couple days. So, and a lot of it is because, the hardware portion is just very expensive to maintain. And we'll talk about drones in a few. And why are drones so expensive? It's the sensors. So, and this is why I will do a little bit of a transition soon, but I want to stick with the Navy and water, if you will, and we'll branch off of it into a segue. But they don't want to spend all this money on a Reaper that's $50 million, and then the Houthis shoot it down. And it was just like, because they have done it. And it's like a 50 million, like that, me and you paid for that Reaper.
Right.
That's not a very good use of money. So they actually came out yesterday, and we'll tie it in a couple of reconfiguring how they're going to use these drones. And that's where I think Anduril is going to be a big beneficiary.
And one of your arguments here is if you have the right software on the sensors, you can avoid getting shot down and losing 50 million, is your argument.
Yeah, they've done it, so they can do it again. The thing is with the software, it might not be Palantir software on the drone. They might be running Maven, but it could be a software made by General Atomics, who made the drone. It could be a software by Lockheed, whomever. But the key thing that Palantir is doing is they're taking that software and that data, that information, and they're integrating it into Foundry, and they're saying to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, these guys just shot down a drone. Come look at this. Like, what's wrong? So that's what they're doing as it relates to the software, is the integration, the plugging and the playing of getting that software to the drone, the information. But we'll get to that. But the thing with NAVWAR, and this is where it all ties together, is NAVWAR is the Information Warfare Center. A few months ago, I dug up that NAVWAR and one of our favorite offices, the National Geospatial Agency, were working together.
Right.
So when I saw that, I was just like, pause, we got major connection. And that's the main thing that I think everybody with Palantir needs to understand. You might not see Palantir in the headline, but Palantir will be there. So, like when we see, for example, and I'll use a commercial, when we see, the Wendy's and the Frosties, when you go to Wendy's, it's like, all right, their supply chain is on Foundry. And that just because as a shareholder. But with the defense side and everything, Palantir is there in some way, shape, and form. And when I saw NAVWAR was partnering with the NGA, there's no way they were not going to talk about Maven at the bare minimum, if they didn't even already know and talk about Maven. So that was like a big thing. And connections, like I say, are huge. So with Project Overmatch, that includes the Navy and everything about, water, if you will, including the Coast Guard. And this is really where we're going to transition a bit. So in 2021, Palantir won a contract with the Coast Guard. It was specific to the response to COVID and, whatever the hell they needed. But keep that in mind. So I don't know if they were giving them Gotham or Apollo. I don't know about that, because the contract was specifically to help them respond with COVID. I don't know if it was more about the vaccine rollout, but the point is they gave them a contract. Okay. Then, and because Sam's not working, but thankfully Twitter's works, then about in April 2020, April 26, I posted about Minotaur. And if you've seen me, I've been posting a lot of Minotaur gifs. That's my way of teasing everyone. So Minotaur is, I'll just read this real quickly. The United States Coast Guard is syncing information for potential offerers who are interested and able to provide a tech demo for Minotaur Reach, aggregating all of Minotaur sensor data and disseminating the data to United States Coast Guard centers via an application program interface for a web browser. The sensor data must come from Minotaur-enabled platforms, including radar, signal intelligence, blah, 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 blah. Navigation, weather, national sensors, the data to sector command centers, and must adapt to any message format, system interface, or any other data translation filter needed. The data distribution for Minotaur must be unclassified, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so specific with the Coast Guard, and you heard all the, the terms that as a Palantir person, you would be like, okay, sensor, GeoNet, all of that. Okay, well, groundbreaking software developed by the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory is giving air and marine operations agents the edge in combating international smugglers intent on evading law enforcement. Minotaur, as the software is called, links sensors, cameras, radars, and communications equipment into a single, more automated system, allowing operators to more efficiently identify and track any suspicious or illegal activity on both land and sea. So Johns Hopkins University of Applied Sciences, which won $1 billion contract 2 weeks ago that I showed you, is built on Foundry, also now has Minotaur. So Palantir is winning. It's all on Palantir, and that is government and defense. I don't know if they classify Johns Hopkins as a commercial entity. I would imagine they do. But that fucking money is coming from Uncle Sam. And there you go with Minotaur, the connections. And that's how we have to look at this going forward is if it's not Palantir directly winning, is it their partner who won? So with the apps program, because I thought they were going to win NATO apps, they lost, but Planet Labs won it. And they're connected to Accenture, who is connected to Palantir. And, it's all these little connections that we're going to see. And when they win, Palantir wins. So Johns Hopkins is doing the Minotaur software. There you go. And they just won $1 billion contract a couple weeks ago. I think on Friday or Thursday, Kratos, I forgot the name of it. They're a drone company. They won a $50 million deal. They're heavily connected and work with Shield AI, who is connected to Palantir. So you're starting to see now all of our partners win, not just us. And that's really where all this government money and all this extra big flow is coming from. Our partners are winning because they have the best, most innovative, cutting edge software to build their stuff on. It's all coming from the Foundry stack. So,
and that's kind of what Karp said on earnings when Mariana asked about the defense side of the business. He gave a lot of praise to Sham and Aki for going into the government and saying, we don't want your money. We want to provide value. And they've been doing that for 10 years. And now it's just scaling 40% growth. And if you're providing that much value, the government probably doesn't want to get sucked into one vendor. But at some point, it's like, all right, if these guys are really going to work with us as partners, not just customers, then maybe we're going to keep giving them deals. So your argument is the ecosystem of partners building on top of Foundry, whether it's a FedStart client or a brand new drone company or an actual department like the Department of Navy, that is going to create such a unique integrated workflow around Foundry and AIP built on top of each other that it can really result in compounding growth.
Absolutely. And that's really what we're starting to see.
But your dog's excited too. He's like, goodness, your dog's got to get some shares. He's excited.
That sounds like a mailman bark, to be honest.
He's excited, dude. Palantir's at 59. I was barking all day yesterday. I was ringing this cowbell. Like all I could do is bark.
So I'll say this: they're definitely right in terms of the ecosystem, and a lot of people don't understand it. And I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say I don't completely understand it. So, like when Sham talks about like mission manager and all that infrastructure, that's really, from a basic standpoint, that's how do you get everyone else into the DoD to provide their product to help the warfighter. So that's the main thing people are misinterpreting about Palantir as a whole. And obviously their government defense is what they started with, and that's really where the product comes from, is they're building not artificial intelligence stuff like an LLM. That's where I think people get confused. What
Yes,
they have.
so let's talk about the LLM. Let's do this. Let's watch 2 minutes of Karp actually talking about the government business, because it'll give us context to go deeper in there, and it'll give your dog a little bit of time to also just relax. So that'll be good for everybody.
Dude, he can go on for days. I'm telling you, this dog's nuts.
Okay, so let's listen to Karp actually talk about that government side of the business, because it'll give context to the next part of what we're going to talk about as well.
Across the board, that's good for the government, it's good for these partners, and it's good for us.
I don't think Shyam's taking enough credit here, or Shyam, Aki, and others. So one of our biggest issues in the U.S. government would be just simply a friction coefficient. And we had the problem that although we are completely focused on helping the U.S. government and allies first and ourselves second, and that's one of the reasons most of us at the table are still here. There was a general perception a couple of years ago that, basically, and you see it in our numbers, Palantir wins, and maybe we win too much and we keep winning, and people are like, well, Palantir makes all this money, someone else has got to make money. And
this is just the most epic rant he goes on, because it's so true what he's talking about here.
One of the things Shyam, and I would say Aki and others, did a tremendous job of is like, look, we're in this for the supremacy of US and its allies, and we're going to prove this by opening up part of our products and allowing you to sit on government data, which is, lay people assume you could just put a product on government data. You can't do that. There's all these tech products we've built that allow you to safely and securely work directly with the US government. And we've begun offering that to all sorts of defense tech startups, and begun partnering with more established large integrators like L3 and many others, actually. And the strategy there was, look, if we actually believe what we believe, let's show it. And this strategy, which Shyam led and Aki empowered, and also kind of did incredible work on, has led to a situation where most people involved in tech innovation now view Palantir as their ally. And so instead of going into every meeting saying, oh yeah, Palantir's great, but their fearless leader is batshit crazy, and he might go off to his commune in New Hampshire, and whatever they were saying, it's now like, yeah, the products are the best and we have great products. And so that's a really important shift. And that was a business strategy, and it really was done by others. And that has shifted our ability to get to market, because, most people don't want to resist.
What is your reaction to that in regards to what you're saying right here about that government business really starting to heat up?
Not surprising to me, obviously. But yeah, they've been laying it out, and and he said it before, they will show up and do the job for free if that's what it takes to win and get the job done. And when they were talking about opening up part of the products, and it's, Mission Manager, JADC2, OSDK, and, all the other, and FedStart, and all of these ways to work with the DoD, they had to prove to them that they can do it, efficiently on the government data in a classified level, not screw up, and carry out the mission better than before. That's the key. So, it took a long time. Obviously, there's a lot more to go, but you're starting to see the entire, armed forces, if you will, open up now that Maven is going to be used by all the branches. But what I think a lot of people still don't understand, and it's nothing against the company, it's just they don't do a good job of, at least in my opinion, of explaining like I'm five. Like, you have to talk to everyone as if they've never heard of artificial intelligence before, because the reality of the situation, no one really has. All they know is the term. So with Palantir, and Karp says it, the LLM is the commodity, and he's right. And what Palantir has figured out, and what they're doing for the government, is they said, we're not going to develop an LLM. We're going to develop what powers the LLM and what keeps it in its lane and everything else on top of it. So what they
And
developed,
that is why they just partnered with Amazon and Meta to help bring LLMs into the government.
correct. So what they have done is they created AI infrastructure operating system. That's the best, simplest way to describe what they built. They built AI infrastructure. So when you ask somebody, what would you rather invest in? The company that makes a light bulb or the company that built and operates the electric grid? That's the difference between Palantir and all these LLMs and all these other companies. They're going to develop their software, they're going to develop their application, they're going to develop whatever it is in that specific niche thing for AI, but it's going to be trained on and powered on an electric grid of infrastructure to make sure it doesn't hallucinate, like they like to say, and pull wrong data, spit out wrong answers, go in areas where it shouldn't be going. Palantir has built all of those permissions and everything within the infrastructure needed to successfully deploy AI at scale in the enterprise. So when they talk about simulating Operation Iraqi Freedom from 2,000 to 20 people, they're able to do that because they are using artificial intelligence. And some of it might be AI built by other companies, but because it's running through Foundry, they're able to do it so effectively and efficiently, no mistakes, no nothing, and they succeed. So that's the key. They don't care about the LLM commodity, though they were smart. They were like, hey, let's make our own LLM, but we're going to make it so we combine every LLM out there and then our own, and then you get to pick which one you want, which was okay, very, very smart. They did what that was very smart on their part. So
yeah, because you see a lot of these software companies like a Snowflake that's actually developing, I think they call it the Arctic LLM. And it's like, you're not going to beat OpenAI, Facebook, Amazon that invested in Anthropic on building an LLM because the amount of CapEx, GPUs, all that stuff, like you're just not going to beat them. But if you combine all of them and provide something that's arguably more valuable, which is the golden goose, we could argue, which is the ontology, that could matter. What was your perspective on Karp's take on, he said lay people think you can just put data on top of a government platform and it's okay. Do you think that is another reason the street's giving it a premium because it's so hard to work with the government?
Absolutely. And, and I don't know if they wrote it in on purpose. I don't know if it's actually part of what's going to happen in the future. I'm sure it's a combination of the both, but they said it's specifically IL6. So, you're only limited to 3 companies, Palantir, Amazon, and Microsoft. So, it's pretty simple at that point as to who it should go to when you're talking about, IL6, because if you need the top 6 level data, you have to go through them. It's as simple as that. And just because you said the key word ontology, I just want to throw this in because I think this is good for everybody. But yesterday, the NGA, who I mentioned before, they mentioned RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation AI or whatever. And our good buddy Chad, a year ago, showed the world everything about Palantir's Ontology RAG system, about all of that.
Palantir actually called it on Ontology Augmented. They called it OAG, not even RAG, because they
that was it. So every report that the NGA has ever written is now going to go through the system, and it's going to take all that data, and they'll be able to train more AI models and LLMs and et cetera, and improve the system. And whether that's Maven or whatever, and you can see, that was Palantir. This was their post. I posted the blog underneath it because the blog obviously gives more information. But they're a whole year step ahead. So, and the key word that you mentioned there, and notice all of this is back to my usual statement of disjointed jointedness. So you have, ontology being needed by the Navy, and then I know Sam Gov isn't working right now, but and I put this out, and this is why I started a few months ago of saving every Sam Gov link in a spreadsheet. Chad, if you want to help me build my AIP, because it's still at the default settings when I first logged in, and I don't know what I'm doing here. just to throw this at you for two things. One is for the Navy, and yes, my spreadsheet is broken down between Air Force, Navy, et cetera, so I'm that organized. Is the Navy's actually
no one can say you do not deserve your gains on Palantir.
Thank you.
No one can say you do not deserve them.
Appreciate that. So the Navy actually has a thing coming out, and Coach Drap said it before. The Navy's looking for a enterprise resource planning plus for Industry Day. So they're looking for a new ERP system. I wonder what they're going to go with. Oh, and who are they awarding $1 billion contract to for software like this kind of stuff? I smell more Palantir. And then just because of the secret word of ontology, the Air Force, they are looking for requirement sourcing and data ontology support. So I expect that to be Palantir too. So when you see some of these things that are sole source, and can you
explain that real quick? Sole source contracting, what does that mean?
So when a sole source contract is the government basically saying to any company, this is your product, no one can make this. You are the manufacturer, the owner. This is the only place in the world that we can get this contract or get this product and or service from. And I'll use, to break it down to an easier terms, because I deal with it in my daily life, is your hat, for example. If you wanted to sell that hat to the government for, Veterans Day, with a Veterans Day logo or whatever, and if they have a sole source contract hat maker, even though if you're cheaper and they sign a 10-year contract with this sole source vendor, because for whatever reason, that's the only place in the world to get this specific Veterans Day Navy hat, they go to them. So what they're going to, and granted, the website's not working, and we've seen this, and I'll give an update on this in a second, with the operations center, it was a sole source thing, basically, because they gave it a little bit of a competition, is there's no company that has a foundry out there. And that's the thing. So no one has a foundry, and that is the sole source that the government is giving to Palantir. Microsoft, and I'm not a techie, so if anyone's out there that's listening as a techie, you can tell me Microsoft has Copilot and Azure and whatever and Databricks and this and that. You're not wrong, but they don't have Foundry. Foundry is the kitchen. What they have is an oven, a fridge, a sink. That's the infrastructure that I'm talking about, the ecosystem that they're able to build on. And I was actually trying to find my little quality data AI picture, but it's on my phone and I don't feel like going through all that right now. It's a little pyramid, and that's what it's all about, of clean data, of clean AI data to train AI. So that's really the main thing. So I won't be surprised when this Navy ERP thing potentially becomes a real contract opportunity and it becomes a sole source thing. This thing right now is just an Industry Day. So when they show up to Industry Day and all these other companies out there, Bose Allen, Accenture, whomever, they go and they pitch their product, and then Aki strolls in and he's like, bruh, just tell them to get out. I already got what you need right here, right now. I could have given it to you yesterday. And then they're like, shit, Aki's right. And they're going to sole source, another contract to them.
Right.
It's just, that's how good and how much more advanced they are than other companies. Just like some contractors get sole source on other things. They're not the only ones. Lockheed will get sole source, random companies like, I don't know if they'll get sole source, but like, Exxon will get money for gas and chemical stuff. Like it just happens. Like there is companies out there that get contracts for cloth because of the uniforms and stuff. So there's a ton of sole source contracts that get through. It's just that Palantir is the new kid on the block and everyone's like, well, why did they get it? It's because we're bigger, badder, and better than you. That's why. And there'll be more to come. And the operations center, ironically, is, I don't know if I was on here since when they did it, but for those that don't remember, and this goes back to Palantir showing up and doing the job and not getting paid, because I was actually looking into it again a few weeks ago, is they got a pilot for the Operations Center. For those that don't know, it's the State Department. It was created out of the Cuban Missile Crisis because Kennedy in the middle of the night didn't know who to call and get an update on, hey, are we about to die? So they created the Operations Center so that if a kid in Ethiopia throws a rock, we know about it.
Right.
So they won a pilot. It was 3 months, 1 year, 3 months, $1 million. Well, at the end of September, they won. And they won. I don't know if I'll call it a one, because it was snuck in. There was no PR, no nothing. But they got a 1 year extension off of that contract for the State Department. And I was looking into it, and this thing is supposed to end in February, I think, but they didn't get paid till the end of August. So does that mean they were just not working for 3-4 months for free? No, they were giving it to them. And that's the main thing that goes back to what Karp was saying. Let us prove to you that we can do it. And if that means they need to bring in another vendor to help, to get it to another level, they're more than happy to share the wealth.
So let's talk about this then, because I don't think any of us still fully understand this thing. We're talking about multiple vendors. L3 Harris and Palantir. Why was this significant, and what do you think this means for the future of defense contractors working together?
You just put me in an avenue where you shouldn't have. You're going to regret this. So, all the big boys and the traditional primes, they have to get with the times and work with Palantir on a software perspective. Palantir is not going to come in and start taking their hardware deals. And I think everyone now officially knows that, is they need them to assist in improving their software and integrating with other systems. So with L3, obviously they're using it for supply chain kind of stuff. And back to the NGA thing, they're putting out, believe it or not, just one thing, I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place right now, but they're putting out, and I can't get to it because Sam's not working, a industry day called like Freedom Forge. And it's all about, improving the supply chain of manufacturing. What did Palantir just put out? Warp Speed, a thing about improving the supply chain for manufacturing. So I expect more Palantir to be coming out of that. But that is exactly what these traditional primes are going to have to need Palantir for, is a supply chain, because our supply chain, and you hear Sham talk about it all the time, it is in a very, very bad situation. We rely on a lot of imports and a lot of resources from other countries, and that is not good. So, for example, if the United States needed to manufacture Patriot missiles for whatever reason, I read that as of now, it will take them 8 years to make a Patriot missile. That's not going to help. They need to bring all of their manufacturing, especially for national security reasons, forget capitalist reasons, but for national security reasons, either back to the United States or within ally, countries that we're friends with that are going to be, and I don't know if they can keep the American mind of 100% pedal to the metal, because we really are just on another level in that regard. Is they're going to have to bring all that back. And using Anduril as an example, they are a foundry supply chain, machine. The whole supply chain of Anduril is most likely built on foundry. And when you saw, I'm sure you saw it because the clip went viral, especially for Palantir people, when they asked Lonsdale on CNBC if Palantir had any part in Operation Pager in terms of the supply chain, and the guy cut in and did the glasses with the cool little snoop. And it's because this is military grade software that is so much more advanced than the commercial, which is a Microsoft. And it's nothing against Microsoft, but you still can't fix the goddamn fucking format of a header on Microsoft Word after 30 years. And the generals are tired of it. And they say, no more PowerPoint. Palantir is really providing software that works. So that's why we're seeing it. So when we see these companies like L3 deepen their relationship with Palantir, it's because they're looking at this, and we also know that they're working on them with Titan. So we know that there's a lot of relationship building with the Titan team. So that's partially why I knew L3 would fall. Just like Northrop is going to fall eventually, sooner than later, because Northrop is big for space and they're big on Titan.
So you think all these defense contractors are going to have to work with Palantir to stay competitive and actually get contracts that the government is willing to pay for?
They're not going to need them per se to, create their own product.
Right.
They're going to need them to successfully and efficiently source the products that they need to build to create the plane or the machine. So that is the difference. So if Palantir really and I don't mean to go so specific on Operation Pager right now, but that's the mindset that these defense companies are using. If they really were I'll call it backbone of that supply chain, of that company, this company's supply chain had two basic things, just to make it easy. A civilian commercial pager company that no explosives go into, and then a terrorist designated company that explosives go into. So think about that. You have to now completely secure your supply chain, so you know that if your company gets hacked by some cyber criminal, they don't find out about this, because these are bad actors. If they knew this was an Israeli company run by Mossad, you better believe they would not have been signing contracts with them. But that's besides the point. So think about it like that. Now that these companies are going to be using an AIP, a foundry, to build and manufacture their weaponry, to refill their ammo, their stuff, it's going to be done more effectively, quicker, more cheap. It's going to help the taxpayer. And that's the main thing. Are they going to take Foundry and Gotham and, build a targeting system on it? Maybe. If they don't have one, I mean, Lockheed has one, so maybe they're not going to use it, but that's where Apollo comes in. And they're going to say, okay, we need Palantir because we have this targeting system that we need to push to the edge to this drone, and that's where Apollo is going to come in. So they are going to work with Palantir one way or another, either individually as a company or in the battlefield, because the commander needs to know, where is this drone? Where is it heading? And all this other stuff. And they're going to pull all that data into Foundry and they're going to look at it. So that's really the key thing as it relates to that. Now, why L3 is so exciting is I don't look at the things on the front. I look at the things on the back that you can't see, because that's the real fun stuff. So L3 for me, and I told you this, and I know many people I speak to, I'm very big right now. I'm trying to find electromagnetic spectrum information. So Palantir, they're prototyping the electromagnetic battle management tool for DISA, as you obviously know.
Yeah.
Raytheon originally had a tool called the electromagnetic plan, like war management tool or something. The Army axed it. It's canceled. Done. They're not giving it any more money. And I think it's because, just like Titan, they got absolutely fucking tranced in the software race by Palantir, who is providing just so much better cutting edge tech that they're just going to say, fuck it, Palantir is already building what they built and X, Y, and Z. So we need to wait a few more months on that. But L3 specifically is extremely big in the electromagnetic spectrum. So they have two big weapon systems. One is called the counter communication system. And if I remember correctly, it is a defensive side of electromagnetic spectrum, where it basically, if the enemy is trying to hear our communications, they block it out. And then they have an offensive system called Bounty Hunter. So, and it's basically the inverse of that. So Palantir deepening the relationship with L3 and their connection to Space Force. And I've been trying to find very deep connections with Space Force Delta 3, which is a specific division only for electromagnetic spectrum operations. This is it. So if the Space Force Delta 3 is overseeing the bounty hunter on an enemy. Palantir, L3, Space Force.
There's a lot of connections there. I mean, like that is the real under the hood. Why is Palantir working with L3 Harris? Because they wouldn't say it's for electromagnetic potential future product development.
That's why I'm fucked up in the head, and I'm trying to. So like that's like the big thing for me was, hey, oh my God, they're gonna really really hammer home electromagnetic stuff now because they got, you know, L3 is not exactly a new kid on the block. They are a major player in this. So, and I'm not surprised that they announced it with L3 before they announced it with a company like Lockheed, because, you know, they've been working together closely with them on Titan. So it just makes sense. And obviously Net Warrior with the integrated tactical network, and it's going to be connected to CPI too. So that doesn't surprise me. I'm waiting for my Northrop announcement because that's got to come next.
And do you think they will work with Lockheed one day?
They do already. They remember Aegis Apollo. So they, you know, they're going to keep working with all these defense contractors, you know, in different capacities. Of course, some will be more used than others. And, you know, the ones that like in L3 that move forward with, you know, full on foundry AIP to help build their products and systems, they are going to win more in the future than, say, a Raytheon if they don't. And, you know, Raytheon is still one of the biggest, baddest, you know, contractors in the game. They're going to win contracts for their products and systems. And you might see in 2-3 years them say, Palantir, all right, give us what you're giving L3. And they'll happily oblige. There's no way I don't see Palantir in the future saying no to any United States government defense contractor unless they were caught working with China or Russia and they were deemed no. That is the only way I don't see it. And that is the whole purpose of Karp and their mission, is they know they need to help others win because there's some stuff they're not going to create and they don't want to bother creating it. So it's going to be a very, very exciting, you know, end of the decade, to say the least.
So this has been really fun. We're wrapping up here, but for those that are just joining, we talked about that $1 billion Navy contract that it seems like Palantir has not officially gotten, but is probably going to get in January. And we talked about the implications of what that means for the government business. For the people that are watching, there's 876 people here. Thank you all for being here. Please make sure to follow Adam on Twitter and keep updated with all the stuff he's putting out around Palantir and the government. Adam, for people that are here, most of them, I imagine, are retail investors in the company. What is your message to them about the government business? Because I think now it's more appropriate for you to say something that you've been saying for a long time, because now people are really listening, given the government growth is expanding at 40%. You invested in this company primarily for the government side, and commercial is a cherry on top. How should retail investors think of the government growth internationally and domestically over the next decade?
I'm a very big proponent in all things of life of just keep it simple. And yes, Palantir is a very hard company to understand from a product standpoint, especially if you've never used it or if you're not a data computer science guy like myself. Like all I was able to do in AIP was create an account. That's it. So, and it's hilarious because they actually still send me the emails when they update it. I'm like, dude, no. But I won't unsubscribe because I want to know what's going on. So Chad, you can count that as a building. I'm building. You know, I say it all the time, and I know it sounds very cliche and very boring, but there is no customer as big as Uncle Sam on this planet. And, you know, just to put it in perspective, whatever it was, the government income that they collected was $4 trillion. They spent $6 trillion. You show me another company or business on this planet that is spending $6 trillion when they don't even have it. So that's just for the United States. The other parts of the world are going to grow. I think with Europe, with Trump, that's going to be the biggest wild card, in my honest opinion, because I've said on record that Asia and Korea, those would be fast growing regions. And we're seeing that a lot, especially with Japan and South Korea. You know, depending on the shift in Europe and what happens in Russia, Ukraine, we might see a way quicker adoption within the NATO, front, if you will, with Palantir, because if Trump does end this war tomorrow, just to say that, there's going to be a very, very high amount of tension still, and they're not going to not go back to the way they were on February 22nd, whenever it was 2022, the day before he invaded. They're going to be building up their strength. We are, and with Shyam's 18 theses, which, by the way, congrats on interviewing him. That was awesome. And the big thing for me, and I don't like to be like I told you so, and I've had the same mentality as him. You either accept that we're in World War III. I've been saying for a long time we've already been in World War III, or we're in Cold War II. And that was a really good way of putting it. And if you're in World War III, you can't sit around and do nothing. And if you're in Cold War II, you can't sit around and do nothing. You have to go and you have to rebuild your industrial base, which is what they're going to do. So with Palantir and the defense side, you have to just be patient. You have to understand it is a very long game. And Palantir, and Karp says it all the time, they are coming for the whole pie. And it's going to take a long, long time. And when you see their partners like an Anduril win a contract and a Johns Hopkins win a contract, those are nothing more than a few more spoons of sugar going into the massive pie that they are building. So you just have to take your time, and you have to understand, and with Karp, they definitely said it best, is it is lumpy. So now the spend is pretty good. Next year, Q1, Q2 might be a little slow. They've always said Q1 is always their slowest gov month. Yep. So it might take a little, especially with a presidential election, with new transition, it might be a little slow, and that's fine. It happens. But if you want to focus on the gov, you're not going to really find it by Googling it. You're going to have to do a lot of research and turning under rocks, and they don't really talk about it. And that's okay. And a lot of people, when I say that the gov is going to outpace commercial through the end of the decade, and they say I'm crazy, I say, well, look at Tuesday when they get $1 billion contract out of left field. They're not getting that from any company. No company is going to spend $1 billion with them, in 5 years, in my opinion. It'd be very impressive if they do.
It's going to be hard to get BP or Airbus to give $1 billion.
Maybe in 20 years, when the entire company is running on one software solution, being Foundry from the top down, but that's many years away. So it's still a very, very long game. And the one thing that I'm going to leave everyone off on is validation. And the validation, it doesn't come from Karp saying it, or Sham saying it, or me, or Amit, or whomever saying it. It comes from the actual warfighter. And I put this article out, the 101st Airborne Division, which is underneath the 18th Airborne Corps, who built the Maven smart system with Palantir under the Scarlet Dragon exercises, they're out there. They wrote a whole argument about how in this 2024, this was the year that they transformed, that this whole division from a, let's call it classic original, army, to a army of 2030 with the cutting edge tools, with all the modern, products and services at their disposal. And the big thing is command and control. So picture, the only way I want to put this in perspective is the Navy and the Army and the Air Force and the Space Force and the Marines, everyone, their brain is being powered by Palantir. So you just have to understand how big of a step that is for such a very slow moving process that is the DoD.
Right.
So to just put this into basic human perspective, when you go out the door, you remember to wear clothes, your wallet, all of this. You don't think twice. Your brain already knows that. The DoD and all of them, they're fucking retarded. They need Palantir, that they're so stupid that they still are trying to figure out how to get Palantir in. Now they're starting to get it in, and you're starting to see it. And that is my point that I'm trying to make. So stay the course. If you buy at 59 and it drops all the way to 40, I don't really feel sorry for you. When you buy at 45 and you're still holding at 584, come and talk to me. Because many of us rode all the way up and rode it all the way down, and I will do it again if I have to. So, just stay the course. Patience, Paytience, patience.
And patience pays.
Correct. And, this was the first step into the Navy, and we'll take another step into the Navy. And we do have a lot of, I think, if I remember correctly, a lot of Space Force contracts that are coming up, and those should be renewed, obviously. So just stay the course, be patient, enjoy, and do your own due diligence and know what you own. And yes, the valuation is high, but you got to pay up for a quality company.
Yeah. And I think what's also really special is that, it's easy to say be patient, because in the stock market, you have to be patient in general to win. But when you're being patient with a quality company like Palantir, with a deep and rich history, with leadership that is just exceptional, it's a bit easier to be patient and just trust that you're not the guy trying to go out there and change the world like Palantir leadership is. You're just playing a small role, putting some dollars into them, and hopefully they can do it. And so you sit back, enjoy the ride. If it dips, it dips. If it goes up, it goes up. But if you wait 10 years, I think you'll be happily rewarded, which is, the goal of investing at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And, it will be a bigger company in 10 years from now. And that's the main thing. If you buy today, God forbid it goes down, and you might need to hold it a little bit. If you can't, take your loss and move on. And, shorts get wrecked.
That is correct. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. 900 people here. If you are curious about Palantir's government business and you don't want to do what Adam is doing, which is literally spending multiple hours a day trying to find these contracts, follow his Twitter. His Twitter will have all that stuff. If you don't have a Twitter, make a Twitter just to be updated with his content. It's going to be very, very important over the coming months and years as the government business continues to grow. 40% growth is reaccelerating, folks. It's not a joke. This is not the same January podcast that Adam and I did for the first time, when we were barely growing at 12%, if you remember, 6% in the US when it comes to government growth. Now it's at 40%. And if that accelerates even further than 40%,
that's fucking nuts.
It can be really, really cool for Palantir. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye. Have a good one, guys.